My name is Eve Levy, and I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon, where I live with my husband and my 6 children, thank God. I serve as the Rebbitzin of Congregation Ahavat Achim here, and my passion always has been building community. Wherever I've lived, in beautiful places all around the world, from Canada to Israel to Denver, Colorado, and now Portland, my passion has always been bringing people together and building community. Well, now the world is smaller than it's ever been. It's so easy to connect, and we are connecting with Jewish women from around the world. And part of our mission at our organization, Inspired Jewish Women, through our trips and retreats and content and virtual things, there's so much going on. We are now bringing to you a weekly podcast where we can highlight different women in the Jewish world. So sit back and relax and get ready to be inspired by some wonderful, powerful, insightful women. Each one has a light that is so beautiful and so radiant. I'm excited to share them with you all. Have a great day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly installment of our Shine podcast, Inspiring Jewish Women. Today, we have a fabulous guest, a friend of mine, all the way from Toronto, all the way on Zoom from Toronto. It's a little different nowadays.
Yeah.
And her name is Rina Deutsch, and Rina is a native Canadian, just like me. We grew up very close to each other. Even though I hardly knew you growing up, I think our friendship really flourished just a few years ago through the Momentum trips, JWRP, and through so much. I mean, I feel like we keep learning from each other and strengthening each other as life goes on. So
Yeah.
welcome, Rina. Rina is an educator, a high school teacher at Ulpanat Orot in Toronto. She's a writer, a blogger. I follow her on Instagram and Facebook. She does these incredible Parsha videos every week that are like, Parsha in 1 minute. Like, how can you get it so fast? I don't know. You talk so fast. I'm like, is she a New Yorker? That's skill. That is skill.
Thanks.
And Rina also owns her own freelance beauty business, which is pretty cool, because I have this like little dream that one day we're going to have time to spend together and you're going to actually teach me how to wear makeup, because I've actually never learned. I'm like Crayola, like I feel like I'm like coloring the dots, you know?
You're doing a great job, Eve. Don't worry about it.
Okay. One day, goals. Okay, Rina, say hi to all of our listeners.
Hello, everybody. And I just wanted to thank you so much, Eve, for the opportunity to be here. I am a huge fan of yours and all the things that you do. So the chance to be here, to be schmoozing with you, to be able to have this conversation is very exciting for me. So thanks for that.
Okay, well, you know, something that over the years Rina and I have developed is kind of a friendship, and I guess we're colleagues, because we're both Torah educators, motivational public speakers. Like, we're in that small world, that circuit. And what I've learned from the last couple years is that you really need cheerleaders. You really need friends that are happy for you in your successes and can also hold you up when you're not feeling it, when you're feeling weak. And real friends, we fix each other's crowns, right?
Exactly.
It's like girls. So it's really such an honor to bring up this topic today of the imposter syndrome, which is something that Rina and we struggle with, okay? And we're gonna be really open with you all, because I have a feeling that a lot of our listeners also struggle with this idea, this imposter syndrome of like, who am I? Who am I to give advice? Who am I to get up and talk about a topic that I haven't mastered? What are my credentials? Like, I haven't done life so well. Like, you know, we're all works in progress. So it is this very like humbling feeling of like, do I put myself forward? Do I share my passion? Or do I just stay back and be quiet? Which is really very, very much in line with Judaism, because there's Rabbi Simcha Bunim from the early 1800s. He actually said that every person should walk through this world with 2 notes in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
In one pocket, we have a note that says, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The world was created for me. I have a mission to do. I am big. I have so much potential. That's one pocket. And in the other pocket, we should have a note that says, Anochi afar ve'efer. I am just dust and ashes. I'm nothing. Who am I? So that is the struggle. I mean, honestly, it's you know, in our training, Rina and I, we actually did a training together for becoming a public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
That was, when was that? 2 years ago, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah, like a year and a half.
Like pre-corona, right?
Pre-corona, yeah.
all a blur. But in that exercise, in that intense months long program, Rina and I, we would get on the phone before and after, you know, presenting, and we'd be scared, and we'd be like, did I do it okay? And there's like this back and forth of like pushing yourself forward and then retreating and being like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I did that. I messed up. I blah, blah, blah. Like it's that back and forth and strengthening ourselves. And
Right.
something interesting from that experience was that Adrienne Gold, who was leading the series, she once said to me, Eve, why do you keep doing this dance? Why do you keep, you know, being big, who you could be, and then being so small? Like, stop doing that dance. And honestly, I don't know how to stop doing it, because sometimes I feel like I could do this, I got this. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just feel like I can't. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't feel like, I'm scared.
So when we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago on the phone, and we were talking back and forth about all this imposter syndrome, and you're like, you know what, Rina, let's do that. Let's do that on the podcast. And I was like, sure, no problem. And we hung up the phone, and then I was like, oh my gosh, like, who am I to talk about imposter syndrome? That's ridiculous. Like, what do I know about it? I mean,
what do I know about it?
My life. I live it every single day of my life, but I was like, oh, I better go do some research, because I can't get out there and talk about it if I don't know what I'm talking about. And I was like, oh, classic imposter syndrome. So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. It's crazy, because it is defined basically as an inability to internalize success, like a person who is not able to, despite the fact that there is evidence to prove otherwise, they're not able to step into their competence, and they're not able to step into their strengths and their talents. They're sort of always pushing it off. Oh, it's a fluke. I was in the right place at the right time. Like, oh, I heard that from somebody else. So like, I just was able to give it over, but it wasn't me. It's not about me. It's just about all these external things.
It sounds like it's just someone not being able to own it. Right. Wow.
And it's just like this abject fear of somebody is going to figure out that I am a giant fraud.
Wow.
Right. And there's this, you know, narrative in the back of your head of, okay, like whatever it is that got me here, it wasn't really me. So I'll tell you, even for myself, and I've sort of like two stories about this, about two different parts of my life. So when I became a makeup artist, I had been doing makeup for years already, for my friends, for everyone. It was just a thing that I had always done. And I had done weddings already. Like when my friends and I were bridesmaids, I had done like parties of 10 and all this kind of stuff. And then I said, okay, you know what, maybe I'll be a makeup artist. But I was like, no, but wait, I have to go to school. I don't have the credentials, and nobody should take my word for it that I'm good at makeup, which is fine on the one hand. But then like also, obviously, even though I had done it and I had people who told me I was good at it, I didn't believe them. I was like, unless I go to school, unless I have a teacher who tells me I'm okay, then I'm absolutely not. And I could never, I couldn't charge somebody $10 to do their makeup, because who was I? And then the crazy thing is, I went to school, and then I did it, and I came out and I was like, okay, well, you know, all the people who are established and they're already professionals and everybody knows them, so they charge X. I can't even charge a fraction of that, because who am I? I mean, I only just graduated. I don't have a website. I don't have business cards. I don't have a portfolio. Nobody knows who I am. So I should only charge like this tiny amount, right? And then as I got, you know, a little bit more exposed and more familiar and more into the industry, then I was like, okay, but you know, they've been doing it for this long, and I've only been doing it for that long, and they've done this many faces, and I've only done that many faces. It's like, I'm not really that good, right? Like, I'm not really there. And people are looking at me and they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what? I mean, like, it's like a hobby that I turned into a job. They're like, no, you work at this and you're good at it. I'm like, well, not really. And it's crazy, right?
Well,
But
Rina, I have a feeling that a lot of people that struggle with this have a hard time charging for any of their services.
100%.
Right? I mean, I used to be a seamstress, and I remember, like, it took me, you know, it takes what, like 10 minutes to sometimes like hem up a skirt or like, you know, put on 5 buttons or whatever. And like, I felt like, ugh. And also like, we're good people. Like, we want to do kindness for the world. Like, I just, for many years, I couldn't charge even the 10 shekels that, you know, I lived in Israel at the time, and the money was very important to me. Like, I needed the money, but I didn't see myself as worthy enough of my service, of my time, as valuable. And it's
exactly
something that starts in our head that we need to work through in order to really, you know, be in this world and love ourselves and give ourselves the respect that we deserve.
100%, 100%. And then, and what it is like you said, we're devaluing ourselves and we're devaluing our talents and our skills and our time. And all of those things are precious at the end of the day. Right. And, you know, I have been finding, or like, this is what I started doing in the beginning when I would feel insecure of like, well, I don't know, maybe my technique is not as good as whatever, you know, the people who do it in Hollywood. Okay. All right, that's legit if you want to say that, but so then change it. So work at it. Go watch another video, do another tutorial, get a book out of the library, whatever it is. If you're feeling lacking in your skills, so practice, work at it and do what you can. And then you should be able to feel like, well, hold on a minute. Okay, I know I've worked on this. I know I've invested in myself and in my skills and in my talents, so that now I should be able to feel grounded and good about what I have to offer. So that's just one thing. I mean,
but let me ask you something, Rina.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been working in this field for many years, right? I mean, is it over a decade that you're doing makeup?
Yeah, it's already over 10 years.
Do you feel after all of that work and all of this experience, I mean, do you come to a point where you finally feel like, I got this, like I'm worth it, I'm good at this? You know, I have an uncle who's an artist, and he's, you know, he's probably 70 years old and he's been doing art his whole life. And I've never heard him say, this is beautiful. Like, it's never good enough, you know, and it's sad for me to see it in someone else, but I wonder if we do this ourselves.
So I feel like there's a fine line there, because I remember my makeup instructor, who was just absolutely incredible. She's amazing in her field. And I remember her saying once, she's like, if you ever get to the point where you think you're awesome, you're the best, there is nothing left for you to learn, she's like, you're done. Just step aside. She said, you should feel good and you should feel confident. You should know that you have skills and talents, but you should know there's always something else to learn. Right? And there's always a new technique, and there's always like could I do this better? Is there a different product? Right? So that there should always be growth in it, right? When you come to a place of complacency and you're like, yeah, no, I'm just going to coast. She's like, that's when you've sort of like lost the passion for it. And so you should, you know, think about doing something else.
Wow.
And I think that that's sort of very telling, is that anytime we're invested in something that we feel really, really passionately about, there's always, I think, going to be like this little bit of like, I don't know if it's fear or like excitement. And those two things can sometimes feel the same. And so it's a little weird. Prodding us to be like, well, was it the best it could have been? Like, could it be a little bit better? Even, you know, even with speaking, right? We have this, even though I've, let's say, devoted like 400 hours to developing a speech and to editing and then to practicing and giving it over, you know, to this crowd and then giving it over to that crowd and tweaking and this, that, and the other. Like, you know, you get up to go speak and it's like, you've got these butterflies. It's sort of like when you get in line for a roller coaster, right? Like, you paid admission to the park. You know what you're getting in for. You get in that line, you're standing there for like 2.5 hours at Canada's Wonderland, right? When we were teenagers, you're standing in line for 2.5 hours as it snakes its way. And the whole time you're getting there, your heart is like pounding in your chest. You know you're in for like this crazy thrill ride. And then you sit down in the car and you're freaking out and they buckle you in and the strap goes down and you start moving. And it's on the one hand, like
no.
Exactly. It's like so exhilarating on the one hand, and you want this, like you signed up for it, you paid, you stood in line, you were all ready for it. And then it's also terrifying at the same time because now I'm going to go on this whole ride. It's going to be the ups and the downs and the crazy and the whatever. So there's always sort of like that feeling. And then, you get off the ride and what do? You get right back in your line. You're like, yes, let's do that again.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. So true. So true. Like we sign up for it, right? It's like if there's a calling, I mean, as hard as it is, we just keep leaning into it, even if it feels very scary. I'll tell you, I mean, with my public speaking, I mean, a lot of my friends they know about me that my greatest fear is public speaking. I mean, there's nothing that really scares me more. And yet that's what I keep doing. And I keep, hearing that knock on the door, like, go do it. And going back years, my good friend Gabura Davis, she called me up when she was living in Kansas. And she said, Eve, we're having like a little Shabbaton, maybe like 30 ladies. I mean, it wasn't a big thing. And she said, I'd love for you to come. We'll fly you in. We can't pay you so much, but it'll be great experience for you. And will you come and be a public speaker at our Shabbaton? And I remember the phone call because I said, Gabura, this is Eve. Like, are you looking for someone else? Like, I couldn't even like wrap my head around it. I said, there's so many other speakers out there. Like, there's so many better, greater people. Like, why do you want me? Like, I have nothing. And she tried to convince me, but I ended up turning it down. And I thought, when I hung up the phone, I thought, oh, phew, I'm free. Like, I don't need to go there.
Right.
And I thought, like, that's it. But the truth was, like, when I hung up, I felt so sad. Like, I felt like disappointed with myself. Like, I let myself down. That's actually something that I want to do. I actually want to share my love and my passion about Judaism with anybody. So this was an opportunity. I mean, the messenger was my friend Gavura, but it was God giving me a great opportunity to open this door. And I turned it down. That was the failure. It wasn't getting up and bombing it that was the failure. It was the turning it down.
Right.
So I'm just going to fast forward a little bit because I've had, many experiences, some of them bigger, some of them smaller, some of them scarier for various reasons. I remember my biggest speaking engagement was about 2 years ago. I was flown to Columbus, Ohio to run a challah bake for 500 people. Men and women, and it was like you know what I mean when I say challah bake. Like, it's hard to keep 500 people, with the noise and everyone's like, keep them engaged, keep them uplifted, inspired. Like, how do you do it? Like, is it even possible? And I remember feeling like the trepidation and the fear and the knot in my stomach before I got up on that stage. Like, I don't have anything. Like, Hashem, like, you give me the words and sometimes you take the words away. And that's also, I do have a trauma from getting up once and nothing came out, like literally nothing. That was when I was like 19 years old. And that's when I decided I'm never speaking.
Never doing this again. Right.
Because it's just, there's no, it's so scary. It's a gamble. You don't know what's going to happen. And the embarrassment and the humiliation, if you mess up, I mean, it's a big risk. So here I was ready to get up on the stage. And I just remember saying these words again and again, Ein od milvado. Like, there's nothing other than God. Like, he has the words for me. He'll give me the strength. He'll let me know what I'm saying and what I'm not. Like, it's not me. It's like taking myself out of the picture and then making space for God. And that's when I got up on the stage and I gave it my all. Honestly, I don't even know if it was like the greatest challah bake in all of world history, but I did it. And that's what's important, right? I gave it my all. That's all we could give, right? At the end of the day.
100%. So I know for me, every time I get up to speak, I sort of mutter under my breath, Hashem sefasai tiftachu fi yagi tilasach. I'm like, Hashem, like, all I want to do now is I want to get up and I want to represent and I want to put out stuff there that people can connect to, right? It's not even about, I want them to connect to me. I want them to connect to the message, to the positivity, to the everything, all those good things. I want them to connect to that. Please just, you put that out there for me.
Right. So Rina, just translate those beautiful words.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Okay. God, open my mouth, open my lips for me, and let me give over your praises.
Wow, beautiful. And those are the beginning words to the Shmona Esrei, the private, the quiet prayer we say in the morning, in the afternoon,
And evening,
right?
Yeah. Or however many times we manage to get it in.
Yeah. Right. So that's just so perfect, so befitting, like just giving it over to Hashem, giving it over to God, realizing that that's where the power comes from. So the
100%.
truth is, as much as we know this, we need to hear it again and again. It's not like, oh, I got that. Like, I have God in my life all the time. Thank God, right? Like finding a parking spot. God, please help me. Like, God is a present, he's present in my life every day, every moment. And yet I still need to be reminded. So I want to share with you, and Rina, I probably told you this really profound experience I had this year when I went to lead my first momentum trip. Mm-hmm. I was petrified. Okay. Like, and in a way, I wish I could have gotten up and said to the 200 ladies, like, guys, I'm so scared, but I'm so excited to be with you. Like, in a way, like, I wish I could have broken the ice, but I just knew I couldn't get up feeling weak. Like, I couldn't lead like from a weak place. I needed to like put my clothes on, put on my strength and get up like, I got this, right? Even though I didn't feel like I got it. It was the first time and it was a big deal. So the day before the trip started, and you could just imagine, I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't eat. I was so nervous because it was like a high bar and it was a big deal in my life and I wanted it to go well. So the day before the trip, I met Charlie Harari. He was just finishing his trip and I was starting mine the next day. And he was finishing his. I waited till he finished his final presentation to the men. I waited to speak to him and I came over to him. I said, hi, Charlie, I'm starting my first trip tomorrow. And he looked at me and he said, are you petrified? And I said, yes, I am. I'm so scared. And he said, good. I thought like, okay. So he said, because if you weren't petrified, you have no right to be up there.
Wow.
And I know, coming from Charlie, because I'm like, wait, you're not petrified. You're like the, inspirational men's speaker, like in the Jewish world, like you are it, like you can't be scared. And I said, Charlie, you don't get scared still. And he said, every time.
Wow.
Every time. I know. So I said to him, and we spoke a little bit about it, but I said, Charlie, I feel like I'm so small. And he said, because you are small. He said, we're all small, but God is big.
Is big.
And and he said, God is inside you. So when you get up there, just lead with that. Lead with knowing who you are. God is a part of you. And lead with that. And that was the chizuk, the strength that I needed to put down my fear and to get up there. I mean, I got up there on the first night, like feeling so confident. Like I just got up there, like holding that message, like wrapping myself, not only in my strength and in my like, pretend like I got this, but wrapping myself in the arms of God. Like he's got this. He's bigger than me. And I'm doing this with God by my side. It's going to be okay.
Right. So I am a very, very big, I don't know if believer is the right word, but definitely a believer in the morning prayer, Modani, right? We wake up in the morning and we say this prayer, Modani lefanacha, I am grateful in front of you, Melechai v'kayam, the living and eternal God, King, Shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla, that you gave me back my soul with mercy, Rabba emunatacha, great is your faith. And so most of the time when we talk about this, like it sounds like great is your faith, like it's great to have faith in you, but it's the flip. Great is your faith, great is God's faith in me, right? When I get up in the morning and I stop and I say to myself, like, hold up a minute, if I'm here, right? That means he's got faith in me. That means he's got a plan for me. That means he has the confidence in me to say, Rina, you get another day, you get another go and do something with it, make it meaningful. I try to really focus on that when I'm like lying in bed, not wanting to wake up in the morning, right? To say like, hold up a minute, God's got this. And God believes that I got this. And as long as I work together with him, then we'll get this.
Wow.
It's
So
hard to
powerful.
sort of keep at the forefront of your head all the time. And listen, we're all human beings, and even people of deep and great faith can sometimes, it's not that our faith is shaken. My faith in God is never shaken, but sometimes my faith in myself is. I'm not going to lie, right? I'm like, yes, God, I understand that you got this, but I don't think I do right now. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And but it's good to have it to go back to. I always say that on the days that I'm not feeling it for myself, that's where I go back to for my self-esteem. I'm like, hold up. Because if the same God that created the highest mountains and the deepest oceans looked at the world and was like, wait a minute, I need a Rina Deutsch there, right? Then I should be able to look at myself in the mirror sometimes and catch myself and be like, okay, you don't think you got this, but maybe you do. And sometimes that can be enough to get you through over like those humps, because we all hit them, we all hit them.
That's so beautiful. A birthday blessing that I love to give to friends is that on this day that you were born, God decided that the world needed you, right? There's no way out of that. You're here every day that you're here. We have to fix, we have to try, we have to lean in. So, wow, that's very, very powerful. And, it's a small thing. It's a sentence that you say when you wake up. I mean, you could put it by your bed, or you could learn it off by heart, or learn a song to it. There's so many ways, or play it, play it on a iTunes, Moda Ani. But just that little, it's kind of like a pep talk. You're giving yourself a pep talk, and that's important. But also, I feel like we need to surround ourselves with people that will also boost us up. And when we're feeling like we can't, or who am I, we need friends that are cheerleaders that will say, you could do it. You've done this before. You got this. That also, it's so, so important. So let's shift a little bit now, because I'd love to talk about vulnerability and authenticity and how to really show up and be the best that you could be, and really make a difference to the people that you're trying to touch. How do we do that in a complicated situation where we don't feel we actually got this on any level? Like, I remember being asked for the first time to speak on marriage. And I just thought to myself, like, I struggle in my marriage, right? Sometimes it's great. But I felt like such an imposter. I felt very hypocritical. And there was actually one time where I was supposed to give a marriage talk, and I was in a big fight with my husband. And I actually couldn't do it. I couldn't get up there and talk about marriage from a place of like, it's so great, it's so positive. And I'm a very positive person. Right. So in that case, I actually switched the topic because it was just too hard to be inauthentic about the topic. So could you talk a little bit to this and to your experience with this path to authenticity?
Sure. So it's interesting. I was listening to a Rachel Hollis podcast a couple of days ago, and she was talking about her divorce, which is sort of just now coming out in the public. And she was talking about how she was struggling about whether or not she was going to share, or how much she was going to share, what she was going to share about it, because she had heard a quote that said, never teach from your wounds, only teach from your scars. Right? Don't ever talk about stuff that you're still in the middle of. Only talk about things that you've done the work to get through, so that you know that like it's sort of like locked up and you can really talk about it. And I was reflecting on that for a long time. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, but hold up a minute, right? Because you're never done being a human being, right? Like, life is a chronic situation. So it's possible that we'll have, acute moments of whatever it is in life, acute moments of grief, acute moments of joy, acute moments of whatever. And we can find tools and strategies and ways to deal with that acute situation, right? But sort of like the chronic overall situation of life is not one that I feel like we're ever done with. So then, like, they're more like scabs than they are like scars. So then how then
Right.
how could you ever teach from that place, right?
I mean, when are you ever resolved on an ongoing issue? You know, like
100%. And marriage, like you were saying, so marriage, generally speaking, for all of us, even people who are in great marriages, right? They all have their ups and their downs. And sometimes you could think like, oh, we dealt with, you know, financial issues already, and we locked that up 6 years ago, and that happened, and then 6 years later, oh look, we're having financial issues again for whatever reason, and it comes in, you know, last time it came in through the front door, today it's coming in from a side window, you know, right? So the way even you're going to deal with the same set of circumstances could be different, right?
Yeah.
Even just like one thing I know I could talk about from my marriage, about 10 years ago, or maybe it's 11 now. I'm not really great with the numbers, but Avi was diagnosed with MS, with multiple sclerosis, and it rocked our world to the core, right down to the core. And it was a very long process that it took for us to digest it and find a way through it. And I have a whole talk about that. And I have like 3 strategies that we used. And like, I could think to myself, okay, well, we're done with that. Like, we had the diagnosis of MS and we figured our way through it and we slogged it out, and everything's great now. Okay, except for the fact that stuff keeps coming up. You know, you got to switch this medication, or there's a relapse or whatever. Thank God, like generally speaking, really thank God, he's doing really, really, really well. But the same thing sort of will come up. And even though I can still employ some of those things that we figured out 10 years ago, 10 years later, we're different people. Our lives are different. The situation is different. The kids are different, all these sorts of things. So it's not like a copy and paste of what I learned how to deal with then. Right. So then should I talk about that? Am I done with it? How can I put it out there? Like, oh, look, these are all the things that I did, but now 10 years later, I mean, some of them work, but they don't all work. So is that inauthentic? Is that a place where like, oh, I shouldn't talk about that because I don't have it all locked up? And I think that the way I see it anyways is, if right now I'm talking about what is true for me now, what I'm experiencing now, what I feel and understand now, maybe that is going to help somebody in their now.
wow, that's
Right?
amazing.
And when it changes, when it's different, and I might have to go back and be like, okay, so that worked then, right? And I spoke about that then, and it was honesty. It was real and it was authentic then, and now things have shifted, and now I'm going to talk about it from a different place. And as long as I'm talking from a place of honesty and authenticity in that moment, then my now might help somebody else's now, right? That's what it's about for me. So I think, you know, it's important, and we discussed this a little bit on the phone also, it's important to be able to give over realistic sort of generalities, right? And I think where we find a line that we have to be very careful about is like the whole TMI thing, right? Because I want to talk about sort of...
I said TMI to my husband, and he was like, what is that? So just
too much
information.
Too much information, exactly. So that, you know, we can talk about general things, right? Like marriage in general. And of course, we're going to have specifics that come up within our marriage. But the idea is for us to give over general things that it's like the specific universal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I specifically experienced it like this, but this is the universal thing that came out of it. And find that space between where I can give over one specific that speaks to a universal without giving over 100 specifics, so that it's only about me and my experience. You know what I'm saying?
The thing is, Rina, like, what I've struggled with a little bit in my work as a public person is, you know, seeing the people in front of me, seeing their needs. Like they need something real, like something that comes from the heart, can enter the heart. And after many years of holding up this, like, everything is perfect on the outside type of like facade, I realized I'm part of the problem. Like, I'm not helping them by holding up this, like, no one knows what's going on behind closed doors. Like, as far as everyone knows, it's great, it's perfect. You know, that's nice. It's nice to be able to have that, you know, that look, but it doesn't help. And at a certain point in my teaching, I decided to get a little more real. and a little more open because I wanted not to be part of the problem, but to make a difference in people's lives. And a couple of years ago, I published my first article that was a little hard for me to publish. I have a bunch of articles published on aish.com and Nashim, which I know you're also a contributor for the Nashim magazine for women.
Yeah.
But this one article, it was called My Seventh Child, My Marriage.
I remember it. I remember it so good, Eve. Oh my gosh, that was great.
For all of our followers and listeners, you guys could Google it and read it if you're interested. But I have to say, before I pressed send, I had this moment. Well, first of all, just to go back a little bit before pressing send, I wrote it, I thought about it, I edited it. It really spoke about the reality of marriage and getting help and working on it, working on a marriage that might not be so perfect, ideal. Does it even exist? I've never heard of a perfect marriage, but a perfect marriage is one that takes work and effort. And maybe I am in a perfect marriage actually, because we've invested ourselves in it. So this article, I wrote it, I put a piece of my heart out there. I sat with my husband, I had him read it. There were certain things that he didn't feel comfortable sharing. So I took them out. I edited it again and again and again but it still felt like it was something very, very authentic that I was putting out there. And I remember before pressing send, I closed my eyes and I said, God, please let this get into the right hands. Please don't let the naysayers, I don't want to hear like all the negativity, but please, 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 just the people that need to read this, let them read it. Let it help them. Let it help marriages. And with that prayer, I pressed send and off it went into the world. And it went pretty far. I mean, thousands of reads and comments and shares, and I got emails, I got phone calls from strangers as far as Australia. Like, I didn't know the people that were contacting me, but there were also people that I looked up to that were saying, thank you for writing this. It really resonated. There were people that were like, at a different stage in their lives, and they were, tapping into the energy there. So it definitely was a big step for me of really like getting out of my way and putting something out there in the world that it felt scary. And at the same time, I must say, I did get some negative feedback, obviously. Like, there's always going to be that. I mean, people that I really, really respected told me that they were upset with me, that they were surprised. That's like, I heard from 2 or 3 people, like, I was surprised, Eve, like, that was pushing it a little bit. And it, like, I went from being like, oh, thank God I did this, to, oh my gosh. Like, even my own sister was like, I think she felt embarrassed that I put myself out there in that way. She said, Eve, all my friends are talking about this article. And I felt like, I'm so sorry if I embarrassed you. Like, I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. And it's just an ongoing struggle. Like, how do you put yourself out there, help people in a real, authentic way, and yet keep that like toe the line, not too much information, not oversharing, not speaking about something that is unresolved. We're works in progress. So I think it's always going to be an ongoing struggle, Rina. I don't know if there's any like answers to this.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, it's the chronic situation of being human. So it's funny. I had a similar situation to you. I wrote last year a piece for Nashim magazine. It was called "The Letter to My 4 Children." It was before visa.
I love that. Oh.
So what inspired me to do this was, I have 5 kids, right? So it was not obviously like a 1-for-1 kind of thing, but I sat down. I was, in the throes of Pesach preparation, and I sat down and I thought about the 4 paradigm sons, and I'm like, what would I theoretically want to say to my kids? What would I want to, if these are the paradigm sons? And of course, I'm sure that all of us see our kids sort of fit into different aspects of each one of them, right? I'm like, well, what would I want to say to my kids? And I wrote this whole letter, right, to the good son and the wicked son and the simple son and the one who doesn't know how to ask. And there are pieces of it that are inspired by my children, right? Mixes of each and each one of them. And it went out, and it seemed to touch a lot of people, seemed to resonate with a lot of people. I also got responses from people from all over the place saying like, get out of my head. Like, how did you know that this is my life? All that kind of stuff. And that was last year. And then something very interesting happened this year. It was Pesach and we were sitting around our table at the Seder and something happened. I can't really remember what. And my 19-year-old said to my 17-year-old, he goes, don't worry, you're the wise son. It's fine. And I was like, oh, what? And he's like, yeah, mommy, I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I'm like, I didn't write it about her in specific, right? Like there are certain things that like I did mention certain things, but I thought that they were, well, again, like I was looking for that specific universal, right? And I thought I had done it. And in general, I had. And for him though, maybe because he was like so into the situation, he was able to pick things out. And, obviously people find what they're looking for, right? And then we sat down and we had a whole conversation. Like I didn't name any names. And again, like for me, where I was coming from, I was like, I see a little bit of everything in all my kids. Right. But you're right. Like there can be a place where, and I think that this is the tricky thing. There can be a place where you are coming from a very honest and authentic and place where you're not trying to rustle feathers and you are not trying to make a big splash. And your article was not about like either, oh, look at me, right? And it wasn't about, oh, hi, I'm so dysfunctional. Like it wasn't anything like that. It was like, guys, it's not always perfect and it's not always easy, but it's always worth the effort. I mean, like that's what I got out of it, right? And some people are always going to kick back against that. And Brene Brown once, she said something, I don't have the quote right at the front of my, like right on the tip of my tongue, but she said something about how like she isn't there for the critics, right?
She says, get out of the arena, like the critics.
Exactly. If you're not in it, if you're not in the arena, then, you're more than welcome to your opinion, but I don't have to take it, right? And I think that, sort of what I ended up saying to my son, we spoke about it, and I said to him, like, sweetie, I love you so much. This, whatever you think I wrote about you, wasn't about you, right? There are certain things that may be, I'm like, but there are certain things that are also about this person, about myself, about everybody I know in here, right? And I said, and what I was really trying to do was to draw on things that affect me that might affect other people. I wanted to write something where people could see that there is this real experience that is not always simple. It is not always clear cut, and can be so ambiguous and so confusing when it comes to parenting different children with different personalities, with different strengths and different weaknesses and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, this wasn't about like, oh, look, these are my kids and I love this one and I don't love that one. Like, because that's belonging.
Was he able to accept that and see that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we sat down and we had a conversation. I mean, again, like, sometimes people, they extract what they want from certain things, and people we have to remember that everybody is reading or watching or listening to everything through their own filter, right? And sometimes that filter is a filter of hurt, sometimes that is a filter of resentment, sometimes that is a filter of questioning. It's a filter, all sorts of different things. And so sometimes we have the opportunity to engage with them and be able to help them take that filter away and see what was really intended. And then sometimes we need to be able to say, I see you, I see your filter. I'm sorry that your filter is making this difficult for you, but I love you anyway, and be able to move on with that.
So I think just like the idea of sharing from a real deep place it's so good when it's coming from a pure place. To keep in mind that not every story is yours to share, right? I mean, if it includes other people, like your children, for example, you would need to be very, very careful about not exposing them, or even your spouse without permission, right? I had to like really work through before sharing that article with the world, to get to a place where my husband was like, he was with me with this, like, this will help other people, go for it, you have my blessing. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing I think we need to keep in mind is what usually holds us back, or the voice that says, no, don't share anything real, is the fear of being slammed by the negativity, like people's negative filters that they're reading things through. Like they might not be open to receiving what you're offering. And it's interesting, like, why are we so afraid? I'm not quite sure. It's a Jewish thing to debate. It's okay not to agree on everything. Like, you could have your perspective, someone else could have their perspective. They could even tell you that they don't appreciate what you just shared, right? Which and we're so sensitive. It's like we're so fragile in a way. We just crumble. I don't know if you saw, there's a great, I think it's a Disney movie, but there's a movie called Ralph Breaks the Internet.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Okay, I watched it with my kids. Best part that I took away was the part, so Ralph is becoming this big, star, and he's getting all these likes and all of that. And then he finds himself, he goes into the comments room, and there's like scrolls, like up and down the walls, like hundreds and thousands of comments coming in about him. And he's like, oh, Ralph's so cute. Oh, this, that, like all these like hearts and all this good stuff. And then he like sees like there's tons of negative comments, and he starts reading them, like, he's such a fraud. Who is this Ralph? Get him off the internet. Like, just all this negativity. And he starts like going into himself, and the head of like YouTube or whatever, like this lady, like she's looking for him. She finds him, and she sees him like crying and like, totally broken. Like, he's done. His career is done. Because he took it all in, all the negativity. And she said, oh, Ralph, I forgot to tell you the number one rule. You never read the comments.
Exactly.
Right? I'm saying, like, we need to, if we have something, a passion, a desire to bring out to the world, to share, if it could be a gift and it could help even one person, then there's something in us that has to move that forward. We need to overcome our fear, our fear of, of people giving us the negativity, or not, liking what we're putting out there, whatever it is, whatever we write, whatever we post. Rina, you and I, like, we're always doing this dance. Like, we want to do good. We want to bring light into the world. And we're constantly in this dance of like, how much, what's right, what to share, what not to share, and also like, who am I? Like, this is just a constant battle. And
100%.
like, I think we're going to actually close in a minute or two. And Rina, I'd love to hear any closing remarks. You had a powerful quote that you shared with me before. I'd love for you to share that. I kind of feel that this is a struggle that a lot of people go through. And the reason that I know this for a fact is I do spend a lot of time with women. I go to many conferences. I'm part of many women's organizations. One of them is called CORE, which is run out of Denver, Colorado. We're both a part of it under the guidance and leadership of Eliza Bulow. And you and I, we've been to CORE conferences before together. I'm pretty sure we've been together. I've been to many of them. And I remember going to the first conference and sitting around a table. There must have been 27 or 30 ladies from all over the world. We're talking Rebbitzins, leaders, lay leaders, passionate women. Like, I literally, like, I remember thinking to myself, maybe we should just not do this conference, and all of us should just close our eyes and pray, and Mashiach will come, like, right now. Like, that's how beautiful and intense, like, the room was. It was on fire with these powerhouse women. And the opening session at these conferences are always that we go around, we spend a few hours going around and sharing just who everyone is, what their work is, what maybe some of the challenges are, and just sharing, like, that's it, like, who they are. And every single woman, every single of the 30 women at the first conference said the same thing. They introduced themselves, and then they said, I really don't know what I'm doing here, surrounded by such chashuv, important women. I mean, you guys are all like really great speakers and leaders. I feel like, who am I? Why am I here? Like, literally, I listened to I was like, just watching 1, 2, 3, 25, 30. Every single woman said this.
I was one of them.
I know, and I was one of them also.
I know.
We were all doing the same thing, but it was so clear to me. We have to step up. We need to see ourselves the way God sees us, maybe the way we see each other. as really big people that have a lot to put out there in the world. We have so much beauty and love and passion to flood this world with, that if we keep hiding behind the who am I, the world is not going to be as bright as it should be.
Right.
But we have no choice but to lean in and to kind of peel away, move through those ridiculous thoughts and hold each other up. Because when it came to my turn, I mean, I felt the same thing, like, who am I to be surrounded by such great women? But I said, ladies, you're so great. It's such an honor to be in your presence, each one of you. So I think like that was kind of what I walked away with. Like, we're all seeing ourselves as imposters, but really we're not. We're supposed to be great. We're supposed to shine our light. So I hope and I pray that our talk today resonated with a lot of you, because I'm assuming that if we feel it so strongly, you're also feeling this at certain times, different details maybe, but we all feel this. We're all together on it. Rina, do you want to close with anything?
I just want to say that I remember getting on the plane to go to that conference and sitting down in my seat and being like, I don't even know why I'm going. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm going to be with this person and with this person. And I think actually part of the reason I was going was just to be able to be in the presence of all these other people. And in the back of my head, I was like, but I don't belong there. And you know what, though? I'll tell you what it is. I really felt that to my core, and I did it anyway. And I think that that's anybody who's looking at you and looking at me and being like, okay, great for you to talk about imposter syndrome, but look, you are fine, and you get up and you're confident and you speak and you're great. And me, I'm nothing. And here's the deal. What I would want to say, and this is a quote from somewhere else. I just don't remember exactly where, and this is it, right? Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act in the face of it. So you and I, we both know how we feel on the inside. Nobody sees it on the outside. So what it is it's not that I'm over my imposter syndrome and I've gotten past it and I'm like, yes, I know I'm all that in a bag of chips. Okay. It's that I know that, and sometimes I don't, but most of the time I do. I know that if I'm here, if I have a talent, if I have a thought that could be useful to somebody, then I have a responsibility to share it, right? And who am I to not be what I'm supposed to be? I think that that's really the question. It's not who am I to do this? Okay, look, as long as I, again, coming from an honest place, I've put some thought into it and made it into, more than just like blubbering for the fun of it, right? Who am I to not put that forward? It might not work for everybody, but whoever it's supposed to go to, it will. And it's not right to hold that back if that's what God gave me to put into this world. So sometimes we need to flip that question on ourselves. Who am I? Who am I to give this advice? Well, who am I not to?
That's so beautiful. And Rina, in your experience, have you found that the more you do it, the easier it gets? I mean, the fear never leaves. It never completely leaves. It's always going to be there. It's like our friends, like we acknowledge it, like, oh, fear, you're here. It's so good to see you again. I missed you, right? It's there, okay? And it's there for a reason. It actually gives us energy. It propels us forward. We should always feel that fear and excitement. But Tony Robbins, he says that repetition is the mother of mastery. Like, yes. If you do it again and again and again, it becomes a little easier. So I must say, after throwing myself into the ring, into the fire, sometimes it feels like time after time after time, it does get a little easier, or maybe parts of it are not as petrifying as they used to. I'm not sure if you feel the same way. I just remember like the first time I ever spoke, even it was probably for 5 ladies, but because I shared, I had this trauma when I got up and I didn't speak when I was 19 years old. So that really did me in. And I couldn't even speak at my Shabbat table. Literally, I'm not kidding you. For all of you that have this fear of public speaking, when we went around and my husband said, everyone share their favorite ice cream flavor. Yeah. I excused myself and busied myself with like the challah and the hot plate and the food. Hello. It was an excuse because I didn't want to speak even at my own Shabbat table, that's how debilitating this fear was. And I have to say, when I got that first invitation to go and give a class, you know, Razi Nussbaum, our good friend in Israel.
Oh, yes, love her.
So she was running a seminary, and I was just running the chugim, like I was doing like arts and crafts with the girls and scrapbooking, and I was teaching dancing and making challah. Like that was easy. I didn't have to like speak. You know what I mean? Like I'm great one-on-one, but like to get up and speak was petrifying. Razi Nussbaum called me, and she said, Eve, I'm desperate for a substitute for one period tomorrow. And I said, I can't do it. I'll get my husband to do it. I can't do it. And she said, I don't have a choice. She said, I need you. I need you to do it. She didn't give me an out. And I remember that night, not sleeping, sitting at the table with papers and papers of notes. I don't even think I had a computer in those days. I mean, the truth is I still use papers. Nothing much changes. But I was sitting there and I was working through the night on this class. I was putting my heart, my passion, my soul into this class that I was going to give over to this small group, like maybe 5 or 6 girls. And on the way, I was a wreck. When my husband woke up in the morning, he came, I was still sitting at the dining room table. And I was exhausted. I was a wreck. I was like, Gaddy, I'll pay you. Please, can you give the class for me? I'll do anything. Please, please, can you give it? Not me. I can't do it. And he said, you could do it. Go do it. And I remember walking the block and a half to the school in Harnof, and I cried the whole way. I said, Hashem, I can't do this. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm not going to be able to bring out what I want to bring out. I'm so scared of the rejection, the failure. I got to the school, you know, it was, the school was, like the girls were not even like so interested in the class. Okay. Like they were like on their devices and like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, hi, I'm here. Like they didn't know that I had prepared like so many hours. And they gave me like half their attention, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But I gave that class. And for me, that was a huge success because I had overcome, I mean, I had climbed a mountain in the last, you know, 20 hours since knowing I'm going to do this class. And when I walked out of the seminary, I mean, the girls enjoyed it. I think it went well, pretty well. I mean, no one threw tomatoes. Okay. So I think it was like, all in all, it was a success.
There you go.
Out of that school and walking home to my apartment, I looked up at the sky and I had this conversation with God. I said, I have never done anything in my life that has felt so good as what I just did. It was crazy. I was a seamstress. I had a business. I was doing totally different work, but that was the turning point in my life. I tasted something so sweet, something that was hidden within me. And I always give Razi Nussbaum the credit for me getting up there and starting this path, this career of bringing Judaism to women, because I wasn't able to take that step without someone saying, you don't have a choice, okay? Get up there. It's like sink or swim, and I swam. So I must say, going back all the way to those beginning days, I was crying, and I would cry every time. I mean, when we moved to Denver, Colorado, and my boss said to me, Eve, I'd like you to introduce the speaker. Okay, this is like my first event. We brought in Dr. Lisa Aiken to be our public speaker for a women's event. And all he did was say, Eve, could you just go up and introduce the speaker? And I said, Rabbi Wasserman, I can't do that. Like, I can't even do that. Like, I turned him down. This is my first job in Denver. I'm trying to make a good impression on my new boss. And I was not there. And every time he said, just do it, Eve, I mean, I would cry. I would drive to the place I was giving a class and I would talk to God and beg him to please help me. So I don't cry anymore in that way. It's not as hard because I keep doing it. So repetition, it helps a little bit. Is that your experience?
Yeah, it definitely is. So it's funny, just before I started teaching at Olpana, it's a very long story how I ended up where I am now from being a makeup artist. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but they called me to do like a mother-daughter night and to give a talk. And I had actually given a similar talk the week before. I was like, okay, fine. I already have it. So no problem. Right. And I went and I did it. And a week later they called me. They're like, okay, so would you come teach here? And I promise you, the first words out of my mouth, Eve, was, I'm like, I'm not a teacher.
Huh.
Right? They're like, no, we think you are. I'm like, okay, but you think wrong. I'm telling you, I'm not a teacher.
Wow.
They're like, well, could you put together a model class and just do it, for our entertainment? I was like, oh, for your entertainment? Sure, that's fine. And I went in and I did it. And then they called me and they're like, okay, we'd like to offer you a position. I'm like, I don't think you understand. I'm not a teacher.
Wow.
Fast forward 2 years and, thank God I'm taking on an even fuller load than I had last year. But I was just really like quick to push it off and to just be like, no, but that's not me. I don't do that. Like you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not that person. And like you said, you got that push of somebody saying like, no, but you are. Right.
And
then
Rina, I just think of the hundreds of girls that you've impacted teaching at Ulpana. I mean, I don't know how big the school is, maybe not hundreds yet.
Not hundreds yet, no.
but generations that you're impacting. And
wow.
I just saw in one of our chats, someone said, I need a fabulous color teacher. And I saw someone wrote, Rina Deutsch is the best color teacher. And it makes me so happy because imagine if you weren't, like, if you gave into that imposter syndrome and you weren't changing lives and you weren't giving this beauty, this gift of yourself to other women.
Yeah. So, and each time we do it, you're right, it gets a little easier. Still get the butterflies, but you know that it's the ride you want to be on. And so the butterflies are worth it.
Wow. Well, Rina, this was such a fabulous conversation. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to have you by my side. I suggest that everyone should surround themselves with cheerleaders and with people that will lift them up and fix their crown and, fix their eye makeup also. And,
exactly.
Surround yourself with good people that are positive and encouraging of you, because the truth is we all have a calling. And sometimes our calling calls us and we ignore it. We push it away. But when we don't listen to our calling, it screams. Sometimes it yells and we feel in so much turmoil because we're not bringing our gifts to the world. And I know that a lot of people feel that turmoil. I know that I felt it and you felt it. And I'm only assuming that so many others have felt it. So I hope that our podcast has helped you. And feel free to reach out to us. I mean, I'm always available to anyone. Rina also is it's very easy to find us on Facebook and
Instagram.
Yeah. And actually, Rina is going to be our keynote speaker. Talk about, woohoo, imposter syndrome, move out of your way. She's going to be the keynote speaker on our upcoming Inspired Jewish Women virtual retreat, which is details coming out soon. It's going to be on Sunday, August 2nd, right after Shabbat Nachamu. The theme of the whole retreat, it's a 4.5-hour morning retreat on Sunday morning. The theme is comfort. So we're going to have comfort foods and yoga and all types of cool things. And Rina will be our keynote speaker. And Rina, when I did call you up to ask you, I do remember you said, me? I'm like, yes, you. Okay. Well, thank you, Rina. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Eve. This was awesome.
This was amazing. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Take care, everyone.